friends, welcome to Tarunayas. Today we will be discussing editorial from The Hindu of 31st of October 2022. So let's see what the editorial is. I've taken this editorial from The Hindu and the topic is Indo-US relations, and you can relate it with your general studies paper 2, effect of policies of developed and developing countries on India and its interest. Now, the topic is about the national security strategy of the United States, and we will talk about what are the main features of this national security strategy of US and what it set out for, what are the objectives of this strategy, and what important role does India plays in this strategy, and how the strategy has recognized the role of India. And we will, in brief, we will see the relations between India and US, so that it will be easy for you to answer any question with respect to this strategy, and also any question that is asked in the mains examination, international relationships between United States and India. So let's see. The article has been written by the Harsh V. Pant from the Observer Research Foundation, and Vivek Mishra, who is also a fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. So let's see what the article talks about. Now, recently, US has launched its much anticipated national security strategy. There was an interim strategy which was launched in March 2021, but this is the final report by the executive to be presented to the legislature. All right, legislature, that means US Parliament has two houses. One is the Congress, which you can compare with the Lok Sabha, and then there is Senate, which you can compare with the Rajya Sabha. So Congress is basically is to see the legislation. The strategy was designed by the executive, that is the president and its cabinet, but it has to be presented to the Congress, the legislative system of the United States Parliament. Now let's see. Now all US president, they are mandated by the Goldwater Nicholas Department of Defense Reorganization. Please pardon me for the spelling here. Reorganization Act of 1986 to bring out their NSS. That means every president who gets elected, they come up with a national security strategy, and they are mandated under this act. All right. So therefore, the president of United States, who is currently Joe Biden, has come up with this national security strategy. So what is the purpose of this national security strategy? Basically, the important point is that it is a kind of a communication between the executive and the legislation when it comes to the national security. So it reflects the agenda of the government, that what the government is up to and what the government wants to do. It also gives Congress an opportunity to assess the cost of that security and also the areas of the investment that will enhance the US security, both internal and as well as external. Internal security in US is known as the homeland security. In India, we call it as internal security. There in US, they call it as homeland security. Now let's talk about the focus of the national security strategy of the United States. The focus will be on the leadership and the alliances. Now basically, if we see that there has been a prolonged Cold War between United States and China, and US wants to reassert its position. Basically, it wants to unilaterally dominate the global order and the international fora. However, and the same thing is reasserted or kind of reiterated by this national security strategy. Therefore, the prime focus of this strategy will be that according to this strategy, this decade is going to be a decisive one for the United States of America, which seeks to not only sustain its leadership but also counter China and Russia, and sustain its dominance. So this is what the national security strategy is about. The security strategy also seeks to improve the US economy, and we know that recently US economy saw high inflation, and due to which the Federal Reserve, the Federal Bank of the country increased the interest rate, which had an impact on the Indian rupee too, because which actually led to decline in the purchasing power of the rupee. And the security strategy also seeks to build alliances and partnership. For example, if we look at the partnership of United States in the Indian Ocean, then it is partnering with Japan, and it is partnering with the India, and it is partnering with other like-minded countries so as to reassert itself in the Indo-Pacific region. In national security strategy, the interim national security strategy that was released in the year 2021 March had called it not as Asia Pacific but as Indo-Pacific. Now, this Indo-Pacific term has a great significance for India because it recognizes that Indian Ocean is a strategic region for India, and India is not only a strategic but also an emerging, but also a dominant player in the region. The usage of the term Indo-Pacific, however, was not liked by Russia and also China, because they prefer to use the term Asia Pacific, because in Asia Pacific China plays a dominant role. However, in Indo-Pacific India plays a dominant role, or we can conclude that India is recognized to play a dominant role and a regional player in Indo-Pacific. Now, the strategy also aims to counter China and Russia as a strategic disruptor of the global order. It also seeks to boost the US economy and its competitiveness, and it also seeks to defend democracy. The focus of the strategy would be the climate change. And if we remember that Joe Biden, after becoming president, had reasserted, and it had kind of reassured the world of the role of United States when it comes to the climate change adoption and adaptation, and mitigation. So it had under the leadership of the US President Joe Biden, a leaders summit was conducted. A leaders summit was held, and the US joined Paris Agreement 2 under the presidency of President Joe Biden. So the climate change would be the one focus. Food insecurity, food security, it should be food security, reassurance of food security. Reassurance of food security, the pandemic. And if we consider the report by WHO, then WHO said in the coming decades 60% of the infections that human population is going to face will be zoonotic, and these zoonotic diseases are spreading fast in the world. Look at the various variants of the coronavirus, and how and the pace at which is spread across the world. Like within month it was all over the world. So the pandemic would be the focus. Terrorism would be the focus. Energy shortage and inflation. This is not other, actually this is outer. Please pardon me for this. This is Outer Space Treaty. Now, the focus of the Biden administration is on the outer space too. Now, according to the Outer Space Treaty, the militarization of the outer space is prohibited. That means any nation cannot deploy any satellite which is military in nature, any weapon in the outer space. Outer space is for the purpose of the scientific exploration, peace, etc., and also for the tourism purpose, which was recently seen. There are many private players who are promoting space tourism. So therefore, the national security strategy, it talks about the Outer Space Treaty, and it also talks about the governance. These will be the major focus. Now, let's talk about the three main fulcrums, or you can say the three main pillars at which this national security strategy of the US is built. The first is the investment. The first pillar of the treaty is the investment. The second is the coalition, which is the alliance, etc. And third is the modernization. These are the three pillars on which the national security strategy of the United States will be built upon. Now let's look at what the investment will be. Now investment according to this national security strategy will be focused upon the strengthening the American power and its influence, investing into the critical infrastructure and the technologies such as microchips and semiconductor. If you can watch the editorial in the playlist about the semiconductor, then I had discussed the discuss the global market of semiconductor and how US is basically investing in this business. As the semiconductor business and technology, it is a highly concentrated industry, especially in the region of South Korea and Taiwan, and China too exports semiconductor because of its dual circulation economic strategy. Therefore, a national security strategy of the United States of America seeks to improve the critical infrastructure, especially in these emerging technologies, which are going to play a major role when it comes to e-vehicle and the clean energy too. So you can link that technology and the climate change, they are somehow linked. We had in one of the editorial discussed that how the technology is kind of a limiting factor when it comes to the clean energy, because the technology which is going to be deployed for the clean energy purpose is going to be very expensive. We had discussed the Kuznets environment curve too in that editorial. So kindly go and watch that editorial. You will understand these things better, and it will help you to interlink various points and various topics in your syllabus. The second pillar is the strongest possible coalition. Now if you look at the US strategy, then US has been talking about this quad in the Indo-Pacific region, I2 this I2 and U2 in the West Asia. So it is trying to build coalition, modernization of its security. All right. So, according to this national security strategy, it has named China as the only competitor which has the capability and the intent to shape the international order in a fundamental way. And that is the reason we are discussing these major fulcrums of the national security strategy, and the major objective, one of the major objectives of the security strategy is to counter China. Now the strategy wants to outcompete China and restrain Russia. Considering the 9-month-long Russia-Ukraine war, which started in February 2022 now, and it has been a very long time since the war started. So the national security strategy of US considers that both long-term and short-term challenges which are posed by China. It focuses on both China and Russia. However, the focus is asymmetrically tilted towards the China, because it, like I said, the strategy says that China is the only competitor which had the capability and as well as the intent to reshape the international order. It is also clear about the opposition to any unilateral change in the status of Taiwan. Now, Taiwan and China, according to the One China policy, it says that there is only one China, there is no Taiwan, there is only one China, and that is People's Republic of China. Now, China, the mainland China, does not recognize Taiwan. However, Taiwan's claim is that it is the real China. I mean, the government formed in the Taiwan is the real China. We will not go into the dispute between Taiwan and China. However, it is important to recognize that US wants to hit at China's weakest point, and that is Taiwan. China's sensitive areas are being hit by US national security strategy, and one of them is the Taiwan. That US is going to oppose any unilateral change in the status of Taiwan. Now basically, the national security strategy, it wants to build a collective capacity through international partnership, creating new alliances, and in order to tackle the shared challenges like terrorism, climate change, technological challenges there, etc. Like China, challenge posed by the China is there. These are some of the shared challenges that the major countries in the world faces, including India. Now basically, if we look at the national security strategy, it does recognize that China's capability in terms of its diplomacy, the global economy, and the governing structure and the military structure, which does have the capability. However, it has downgraded Russia's economy, military soft power, and influence globally, even as it identifies countries such as Japan and India to fill the emerging gaps. Now, what does the national security strategy says or claims? That it is going to downgrade the Russian economy, like basically Russia in every aspect, whether it is international influence, the economy, the military and the soft power, etc., etc. And it also recognizes that India and Japan are soon going to fill these emerging gaps. And also it hinted the possible integration of India with the G7. Now let's see what the national security strategy holds for India, which is the most important part of this strategic document. The first thing is that it identifies India as both a bilateral as well as a multilateral partner in the Indo-Pacific. But more importantly, its status as the largest democracy and a major defense partner and a larger democracy. If we go back, then you would recognize that defend democracy is one of the objective of the national security strategy, and coalition will be built with the democratic countries, and India is the largest democracy in Indo-Pacific region. So India's partnership in the Indo-Pacific, it has to be assessed in the critical terms. That means building a lattice work of strong, resilient and mutually reinforcing relationships through regional partnership such as Quad and I2U2, like I discussed. This is basically this is also known as the Western Quad. West Asia Quad basically. So there is a Quad in the Indo-Pacific region and there is a Quad in the West Asia, which is I2U2. So like I said, there was an interim strategic document which was released in March 2021. So basically this strategic vision has kind of completed that vision. So the critical part of the NSS is to inform the US Department of Defense strategy, especially in the two areas, that is the nuclear posture and the missile defense. The NSS release was of course delayed by the Russia-Ukraine war. However, it now appears to be timely in the backdrop of the Russia-Ukraine war, with one of the most potent possibilities for the use of a nuclear weapon since Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. So in conclusion, if we see that Biden administration has also released two more documents. One is the National Defense Strategy and the this Nuclear Posture Review and the Missile Defense Review, so as to reinforce the central message basically the objectives of the national security strategy, so that to align the nation's ends, ways and means, and rounding off the arc of the national security assessment. Right. So in brief, we would now look at the Indo-US relations. That basically Indo-US relations are now defined, that they have evolved from, this is not form but from being estranged democracies. Now if we remember that in the early days of independence, US was not a very good partner with India. It had more inclination towards Pakistan, and slowly India and US relationships have gained momentum, and now they are becoming strategic partners. And US administration, Biden's administration, has also recognized India as the regional player in the Indo-Pacific region. Now India and United States signs 4 fundamental or foundational agreements with its strategic partners, and it has signed these 4 documents with India too: the Limau, the Becca, the Comcasa, and Josomia. These are the 4 foundational agreements which evolves US relations with any country from bilateral relation to strategic relations. Defense technology and trade initiatives are taken. The India has been granted strategic trade authorization once, which elevated its position to the strategic defense partner. India also enjoys trade surplus with US, which stands at 119.42 billion US dollars in 2021 to 2022 financial year. In terms of the strategy, India and US does share a strategic energy partner. It has United States and India Climate Energy Agenda 2030 partnership which is going to promote clean energy via science and technology. So let's look at some of the initiatives under the 2030 partnership. The first is the United States India Agenda 2030 partnership, the revamped strategic clean energy partnership, India US Civil Nuclear Energy Corporation, which is again going to promote the clean energy, the transformation of the gas task force as India US low emission gas task force, the institutionalism of the India Energy Modeling Forum, the PACE-R, which is the Partnership to Advance Clean Energy Research. It has expanded, and recently PACE-R was expanded in scope. Right. So if we consider the strategic partnership, then yes, Quad is there. 2+2 ministerial dialogues are conducted between the foreign ministers and the defense ministers of the two countries. And I2U2 is also there. And the West Asia, the Blue Dot Network. What is this Blue Dot Network? Basically, in order to counter the debt trap diplomacy of China, it is going to promote the sustainable infrastructure and civil nuclear corporation, which we have already discussed. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching Tarun IS. Have a nice day.